Okay, guys. So, without much ado, maybe we can go right into the first keynote session. If you agree, so we have our, as I said, initiator, great friend, and a great researcher as well, starting the whole conference. Hans de Roos is going to be opening it, and let me just officially recall some of the facts of Hans' very rich biography. Uh, it's a very complicated and complex task to introduce Hans, because he's very cosmopolitan. He's from each country in the world. He's Dutch, living first in Germany, now he's in the Philippines, and God knows what else he has in his sleeve. But he studied political and social sciences at the University of Amsterdam, then in Berlin. So basically, he made a career in public administration and in the financial field, which is very far from where we are right now, here in this conference anyway. But his true passions, however, was always art history, and photography. He got involved in Dracula studies in 2010 while preparing a photo illustrated Dracula edition. And if you have a chance, look for it, because it's a beautiful edition of Bram Stoker's Dracula with Hans' vision of how it all looks and should look.
Find one. I don't have it with me right now. Sorry.
I'll try and find it while you're speaking, because
I didn't prepare for that, but you can find it.
I can find. Or maybe I'll post the link in the chat in a moment. Yes, okay, so that was this Dracula, illustrated Dracula edition. Since then, he has made a series of groundbreaking discoveries about the true locations of Castle Dracula. In fact, you can find Hans traveling through Borgo Pass and many other locations, just trotting with his rucksack and checking what's true and what's false. So this is Castle Dracula, Scholomance and Carfax, the lifetime identity of Count Dracula, the Icelandic and Swedish versions as well, and the first US serialization of Dracula. Hans is the translator and editor of Power of Darkness. That was published in 2017.
Very interesting book.
And hopefully he will say something about it in a moment as well. And contributed to Dracula in International Perspective, edited by Marius Krishan in 2018 and published by Palgrave Macmillan. Sorry. He was the acting editor of a letter from Castle Dracula, the Bulletin of Transylvanian Society of Dracula, and is the author of numerous articles about Stoker's novel. Also awards are on the, it's got quite a collection. Oh, Marius is showing Hans's illustrated edition of Dracula. Exactly. You were fast. He received the Research Award from the Transylvanian Society of Dracula and Lord Ruthven Special Award in 2018. He is the initiator of this Congress, as I have already said, and the Congress, the fourth Dracula Congress that happened in Dublin in 2016. And last year, he won Golden Bat Award for his video documentary about Philippine vampires. And this film is available on the conference website, so if you want to check it out, please you can watch it for free any moment, apart from now, because now you're going to hear what Hans has to say for you today. So this is all, and Hans, over to you. And this is the first keynote speech of the day.
Thank you, Magda, for this magnificent introduction. Laurels are heavy on my head. I'll just start right in the middle. My presentation will be about the Scholomance, a well-known word for everyone who's read Dracula, the second location in the book that is connected with supernatural powers, with evil powers, and we are going to try to find out where was this Scholomance and where was the Lake Hermannstadt that Stoker was talking about. And I'll now will share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. It says, Host disabled participant.
Yes. Hold on, my fault. Sorry, correcting it right now.
Okay, I'll try again.
Try
again.
now. Try now.
Okay, now.
Very impatient.
I still, okay, there we go.
Okay.
That's the program, and this is my presentation. Everyone sees this blue screen with the dragon. Hello?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Can you? Because I can't see anything, to be honest. No, I can see nothing. So if you can try again.
Okay, I'll go back to the. I must pick it from here. This is the one.
Oh, right. Now I can see it.
Okay, I must.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I must pick it from the menu. Okay, everyone can see this. This is the title, the location of Lake Hermannstadt. How to get there? I have tried to visit this lake, if it's the right lake. And in the weeks before this conference, I've been looking a bit deeper into contemporary publications that mention the same lake and that discuss the myth of the Scholomance. So to start with, the Scholomance today is widely known to a lot of people, not always in the original form, because it has been popularized by Bram Stoker's novel, and you can find it back today in many video games or youth novels about a mysterious school where pupils are brought up to learn wizardry, a bit like Hogwarts. So it is a very widespread name, but not everyone knows, of course, what were the sources and origins of this myth. Now we start with Van Helsing. This is the text from Dracula, where he explains that the Draculas were a great and noble race. You can all read it. And they learned the devil's secrets in the Scholomance, amongst the mountains over Lake Hermannstadt. There you already see here, Stoker makes a spelling error, and we'll see later that this spelling error comes from his source that he used, from Emily Gerard. Van Helsing mentioned the second time, to make clear that Dracula personally attended the school and has this strong connection with evil. Here we see the sources or the notes that Bram Stoker made on his sources. He made some scribbles about the book or the article Transylvanian Superstitions by Emily Gerard. Was published in the 19th century in 1885, and you see here that line for line he takes his notes about what he learned from that article. Emily Gerard published also a book 3 years later, 1888, and here we find the same text as also quoted in Transylvanian Superstitions. So here you can all read this. As I am on the subject of thunderstorms, I may as well here mention the Scholomance, or school supposed to exist somewhere in the heart of the mountains, and where all the secrets of nature, the language of animals, and all imaginable magic spells and charms are taught by the devil in person. Especially interesting for us is when she describes where the Scholomance should be located, or at least the lake for the where there is made, a small lake immeasurably deep, lying high up among the mountains to the south of Hermannstadt. Is supposed to be the cauldron where is brewed the thunder, and in fair weather the dragon sleeps beneath the waters. Romanian peasants anxiously warn the traveler to beware of throwing a stone into this lake, lest it should wake the dragon and provoke a thunderstorm. Now this is what Stoker knew from Transylvanian superstitions. We are not 100% sure if he also read the book. Robert 18 Bisson and Elizabeth Miller, in their annotated edition of the notes, they say there's no evidence that Stoker also read the book. But Locke Hayes, in our last year conference, he presented the opinion that Stoker may have very well read a copy of the book and even made some scribbles in it. If we look at the name Hermannstadt, that is today Sibiu in Romania, Saxon state, one of the 7 Saxon cities. Did either of them know where actually the lake was located, which Gerard describes as being south of Hermannstadt? That doesn't provide any geographical clues, but and all we know about background is that traditionally it's believed that Scholomance has to do with scholars that are following the wisdom of the biblical King Solomon. He was believed to be have power over supernatural beings and also over the weather. So Solomonari, the wizards, are learned in the wisdom of Solomon and are able to create storms and ride dragons. That is documented in a book by Friedrich von Müller, who is writing about Siebenbürgische Sagen, that is Transylvanian folklore, in 1857. Here we see King Solomon on a traditional painting by Pointer with the Queen of Sheba. And here we have another illustration, a more modern illustration about a so-called Solomonari or Solomonar. To find out more about it, I read Leslie Klinger's book, The Annotated Dracula, the new Annotated Dracula. He believed that the founder of the Transylvanian Society of Dracula, Nicolae Padoraru, identified the Scholomance as the rocks of Solomon, where the scholars took their oaths to uphold their way of life, located at Bulialac, high in the Carpathians between Sibiu, Hermannstadt, and Brasov. So that's what Klinger documented in 2008, pointing to the opinion of Nicolae Padoraru. The problem is, if you go to that lake, like I did in 2013, there are no connections to any rocks of Solomon documented there. There's no folkloric tale or any travel guide that will show you where are the rocks of Solomon. So I'm afraid that Padoraru was wrong. Also Gerard, in her book, when she describes Bulialac, she doesn't mention any supernatural qualities of this lake and no connection to the Scholomance. Another opinion comes from McNally and Florescu. They wrote already in 79. Near Hermannstadt, known as Sibiu modern Romanian, close to the town of Paltinis Pietrele, is a spot called Pietrele lui Solomon, the rocks of Solomon. We know that students often took vows to uphold their way of life. That was the essential Dracula. Also here we encounter a problem. Where is this town that they mention, Paltinis Praetorly? It is not marked on any map of Transylvania that I could find. The word Paltinis is a generic name that refers to this kind of tree, and there are several towns in Romania that are called Paltinis, so it doesn't give us a precise clue. Sorry, anyone? I thought someone was making a question. Okay. Now, in the end, I found something that made more sense, and that was in a online travel guide. See, this lady, Rachel Mundy, she explains that according to a local legend, King Solomon, while fleeing on horseback, fell into an abyss while his steed was jumping from one rock to another over 50 meters distance. And this is in the neighborhood of Brasov, a little bit south, 5-6 kilometers south of Brasov. And every year, the inhabitants of the Shai district still visit this place to commemorate the one day in the year that they were allowed to sell goods in Brasov without paying a toll. So today you can still see this place, and here I have a photo. It's like a touristic spot with little benches where you can make your picnic. Here you see how high these rocks are. In the middle is a cleft, and that is where supposedly King Solomon fell into. But here too we encounter problems. First, this Solomon's Rock is not what you would call near Hermannstadt, as McNally and Floresco believed, and it is also not to the south of Hermannstadt. I mean, technically it is a bit to the south, but no one would describe it as such if you are describing a place that is 140 kilometers east of Hermannstadt. So these rocks are not in the right location. And now comes the big spoiler. When I did some more research, I found out that this King Solomon that was believed there to jump with his horse and fall into the cliffs, he was an Hungarian king who was running away from his own mother, cursed by his own mother because he had killed his own brother. There is no connection between this King Solomon that is linked to the Solomon rocks and the biblical King Solomon, who is believed to influence the weather. So here with the Solomon's Rock, we end at a dead end. Can strike it out, no Solomon's Rock. Finally, more productive was then to look through the book by Emily Gerard, the book she published in 1888. And there I found a chapter in which she describes a trip that she attempted to make with her travel buddies to a certain Jezersee. And she describes it here, you can read it here in English. Jezersee, a mysterious lake high up in the hills, of which many strange tales are told. This Meeresauge, or Eye of the Sea, as all such high mountain lakes are called by the people, is the source of the river Sibin, and believed by the country folk to be directly connected with the ocean by subterranean openings. The bones of drowned seamen and spars from wrecked ships are said to have been washed ashore there, and popular superstition warns the stranger not to presume to throw a stone into its gloomy depths, as a terrible thunderstorm would be the inevitable result of such sacrilege. According to the same people, the Jezersee would be no other than the devil's own cauldron, in which he brews the weather and where a dragon sleeps coiled up beneath the surface. And as you can see from all these points in this description, this lake that she wanted to visit, that is the lake that she mentioned in Transylvanian Superstitions and also in the introduction to her book. So if you can find this lake, then we know what she meant by the Devon's own cauldron. And then we know what was the source of Stoker's Lake Hermanstad. I was able to reconstruct her route. These are old maps. And here in the upper right corner, this is the arrow that goes to Sibiu. If you go the other direction, you arrive at the customs post at Ladus. And from there, Gerard traveled to Colonia Bistra, which was a colony of German settlers who were felling woods there for the paper factories in Petresti. And they built a very big dam in the river Bistra to speed up the transport of the wood. This dam is also described by Emily Gerard, and from there we can find out where did she want to go. In the end, her destination are these two lakes that you see in the right bottom corner, Jezeromik and Jezeromare, meaning big lake and small lake in Romanian. So the name Jezerul is the Romanian variant, and the Germans, they called it Jezer. So that is how she called it Jezersee, and this was in accordance with what the Saxons of that time, the German speaking people of that time would also call it. Here you see it again more in detail. One is very small, and the other is a bigger, and is, let's say, surrounded by a very high cliff, so that it is positioned within a cauldron. And still, from the description alone, you could not know which of the two lakes Gerard was pointing to. And to find out, I made a hiking trip there. My first trip there was in August 2013. And I had found a nice little pension where I could sleep, and where there was a very helpful host who connected me to a local guide. And here again, you come back to the name Paltinis, because Paltinis is a little town between the hotel where I was sleeping and the mountains where I had to travel. So it is very well possible that McNally and Floresco had heard the name Paltinis somewhere and knew it was connected to this Scholomance meat. But because they tried to connect it with Solomon's Rock, in the end, the story made no sense at all, because there's no Solomon's Rock at this lake. Here again, you see a map with Hermanstad in the upper right corner, then the Pensiona, Grandor, and from there you see a little dotted line of the mountain tops where you have to hike, and you have to go there barefoot till you arrive here at Jezeromare, and a few miles further is Jezeromik. So that's the trip I made the first time. And here you see some travel impressions. At the beginning of the road, it is still forest, but you see already it's very foggy. There are shepherds on their way with sheep. And if you continue onto over the shoulder of the mountain, it's very foggy. It is not very inviting. See this very big boulders here. You see big dogs that are said to be fighting with bears even. You see a shepherd here who is herding his sheep. Donkeys are also around. Yeah, there's a sign that you have to follow with the red bar, but still it is, for me, it was very confusing to know which way exactly to go. So I was very happy to have a local guide. And we did a part of the route with his car. And then we had to park it because then the natural reservate, the protected area began, and the rest we had to do on foot. And we were already nearly 2,000 meters high at that point, Sour Charbonnet. Still there are flowers there, Alpenrosen. Here you see the rest of the way, also covered in fog. This is my guide. He was a member of the mountain police of Paltinis, so he really knew his way around there. And he was collecting the tops of these plants here. You can make a liquor of that, so he was combining it with a trip to collect some of these plants. Here we go again. Then we are nearly at the location where we want to go. You see big boulders, big stones, and here this is, sorry, I must correct myself. These are photos from the second trip, because then I made more photos. This is from the first trip. This is August 2013. And you see the lake is surrounded by these high cliffs. It has this emerald green color, and it's about 300 meters, I think, diameter from the longest stretch, and across maybe 130 meters or something. And what was very rewarding for me when we arrived there, my guides told me, don't throw any any stones into the lake, because that could provoke a storm. He also said this lake is fed by an underground well, so that the water is continuously rising and it flows over the edge, and it forms the origin of the river Sibin. That's the river that flows from there to Hermannstadt. So he spontaneously offered me 3 descriptions that match with what Emily Gerard already described. So by this description, I was sure this must be the lake that she had tried to reach, and this must be Lake Hermannstadt, and this is the mysterious lake where the dragon is supposed to sleep beneath the surface. This is not such a nice picture, just to underline that this region is really dangerous, that there's really a lot of thunder there. This was a German tourist who was struck by lightning on top of a nearby hill that we also had passed just a few months, 3 months before I made my trip in August 2013. And he was on the way there hiking with his family, struck by lightning. He never stood up again, and he left a family of 7. So the region is really known for bad weather and thunder. This is the romantic side, the romantic picture. There's of course also folklore about these mountains. The lake is at the bottom of Mount Sindrel. A bit further is Frumaza. And it is said that Sindrel, the shepherd Sindrel, he was in love with Frumaza, but her parents tried to connect her to a rich but very ugly guy. They killed Sindrel, and only after their deaths they were connected as 2 mountains standing next to each other. And there are several more variants of this myth. Another says that Sindrel was in love with another girl, with Mariuka. Frumosa was very jealous, and then there were a couple of fairies that lifted them both up into the sky, and they thought, oh, this is our Sindrel and Mariuka, this is our happy moment, but then they dropped them down to earth, and the 2 lakes, the small lake and the big lake, were formed there where Mariuka and Sindrel hit the earth. So You can read about this more in detail in an article that I created already to give all the backgrounds of these stories. Now we come back to our original question. Did Gerard or Bram Stoker or both really know where this lake was located? And as for Gerard, I think yes, because he was actually traveling there. If she did know herself, at least she had guides with her. I think they also would consult a map. So she must have a rough idea where this lake was located. And for Bram Stoker, on the other hand, I doubt it, because there's no evidence that he recognized the lake that was described in this chapter 55 as the same place that was already mentioned in Transylvanian superstitions. He doesn't mention the connection to the ocean, for example, this underground connection. He doesn't use the name Jezusee that Gerard uses only in this chapter. So he doesn't mention anything in Dracula that could not be found already in Transylvanian superstitions. From my side, I tried to document this trip, and you can do that nowadays by making photos, and you have a little geotagger on your camera. So each photo has already in its data, its photo data, also the exact coordinates where the photo is taken. You can play that all into a digital file, and this file again you can display on Google Earth. It shows you a zoomable map where all the photos are visible. Then you click one of the photos, pops up, and you can see there the exact time, the exact place. So it is like an illustrated trail that is documenting all of my story. And I planned to publish this together with the travel guide, but the travel guide never really materialized. So I still have it on my computer. But today there are also digital maps of mountain hikers that will show you the same trail without the photos. Still, even if you have an exact map and an exact description and photos and everything, I still recommend try to team up with a local guide that knows the terrain, that knows the weather, that knows the animals, that can talk with the shepherds and so on. If you're there on your own, there's a 4 or 5 hour stretch of walking. It is not so nice if you just you step into a hole, you cannot walk anymore, there's no one to help you. So better go with a little group and have a local guide with you. After I found this description in Emily Gerard's book, I was looking if there were other people that had been hiking to that same lake, this Jezusee, or Big Jezer, Große Jezer, Siebens Jezer, the different names for it. And I found a description in the yearbook of the Transylvanian Carpathian Association. These were people that were hiking in the mountains for fun and for studies. And in 1891, this lady, Frida von Kimakovic, she made a trip to this very lake, also coming from the north. And from her trip, we can first see that, again, this is the origin of the Siben River, as described by Gerard. Sorry. It should be so deep that you cannot measure it. That is what the local shepherds say. It should be connected with the ocean or with the sea. When a ship is going down in the ocean, then the shipwreck will appear here in the sea. So again, this confirms she's talking about the very same lake. And she also gives us a precise description of the mountaintops that you have to cross. If you come from the north, from Ladus, these are the mountaintops that you have to follow. So that made it easier for me to pin it down on the map. As you also had bad luck the first time they were there halfway, then suddenly a big storm, an ice storm came up, they had to go back. The name that she uses also, Großer Jeser, Big Jeser, that confirms that Gerard copied the name from the people who described it locally. Sources to Rift Sibin, deep, connected. So we can say, okay, the lake that Frida van Kumakovic tried to reach in 1891, sorry, let's go back, 1891, is the same lake that Gerard already tried to visit. I tried to find out something more about the backgrounds of this Frida van Kumakovic. I could not find much useful, but I think that's either her brother or maybe her father was Moritz van Kumakovic. She was a very well-known conservator of the zoological collection of the Museum of Natural History in Hermannstadt. And here you see him digging out a European bison in Sikishoara. He made himself a name with that. So I think she was connected to him and belonged to the upper strata of the Saxon population in Hermannstadt. Then after I discovered her story, I discovered still more. There was a Franz Friedrich Fronius, pastor, botanist, geographer, local historian, and he published already in 1853, so that's nearly half a century earlier, an article about his trip to the same lake. And you see it here in German, so you have to read some German in order to understand it, but he also describes the very same things. Emerald green color, an invisible spring that is feeding the lake from below. The lake is the origin of the Sibin River. The Wallachian name is Jeser. He says the German called Meeresauge. That's exactly what Gerard already described. So he already mentions all the characteristics that Gerard will come up in 1881. Then Beeld, he's a very well-known geographer from this time in Transylvania, zoologist, also historian, school inspector, and he was the president of the Transylvanian Association for Natural Sciences. He describes the same lake again in 1881, nearly the same trip. Stays in the same place, takes the same time. And he also mentions the route from the north and says that the destination of this lake and these mountains is popular for people that have chest problems or lung problems because the air is so healthy there. And that's the very reason that this Frida van Kumakovic visited this region a decade later. Then the third article, Moritz Kist, astronomer, meteorologist, but also theologian. These people combined many disciplines, were very learned, and he describes in the same year, 1881, again, the same lake, origin of the Sibin, Meeresauge, very deep. I've listed it here for you. So he mentions again the same characteristics of the same lake. And he also says throwing a stone into the lake is believed to cause a thunderstorm. That is what Gerard also said, and that is what my guide Stefan confirmed to me. Altogether, I checked 8 different reports, all from this time, 1853, 1897, all describing hiking trips to this lake. And you can learn from that these routes were already established as trails for horses or for mules. You could rent pack horses, you could engage guides, you could get shelter there on a more or less regular basis. So it was not completely terra incognito. It was already known to people living in Hermannstadt that you could make an excursion there and get to that lake. And she could also, Gerard, draw from publications that I mentioned before, and draw on the expertise of the Carpathian Association in Hermannstadt that gave her tips. And she was also familiar with the book of Beeld, so her article was embedded in a certain discourse that already was practiced at this time, that was published. She was not the very first pioneer to go there, but she was this knowledge was already there about this lake. And all these sources, they mention stormy weather. Lake is the beginning of the Sibin River. There's a subterranean source. There's this connection with the ocean, this Meeresauge. But the strange thing is that all these travel descriptions don't mention the Scholomance, and they don't mention a sleeping dragon. So that is the big question. How did Gerard connect this lake with its special qualities with the myths of the Scholomance? And to understand it, I started again from the other side. Instead of starting with travel descriptions to this lake, I looked at people that mentioned this myth of the Scholomance and published about it. And the first article I found is from 1865, Willem Schmidt, known to people already studying the Scholomance. He describes Scholomance where the language of all living creatures is taught, all the secret forces of nature, all the secret charms and formulas and defense magic is taught by the devil himself. And he has the 10 disciples, and one of them is held back to help the devil make the weather. So this is the story basically that Gerard also quotes, and then goes to a bottomless sea, and there he summons the dragon, and the dragon flies up in the sky, touches the clouds, and then it starts raining. So the myths that Gerard quoted is already described in a magazine of the year 1865, that's 16 years before she published her first article. Another knowledgeable person was a Romanian folklorist. He was tracing the places where this myth was told. This is an article in Romanian, difficult for us to follow, but luckily there was also a third scholar, a Romanian linguist, who summarized his findings for us in German. And the strange thing here is that he summarizes the story of Marion and says that after the Solomonari, or after the pupils, the students of the devil have finished their courses at the Scholomance, then they meet still new creatures, and these creatures teach them about how to make the weather. And after completing these studies, they get a golden bridle that they need to tame the dragon. So here you see already the Scholomance itself is not identical with this lake. It is not at the same place. You have to travel from the Scholomance to arrive at this lake, and not all students do this. Also interesting in Gaster, he was a linguist, so he tried to find out the origin of the word Scholomance. He believed that Scholomance is originally derived from Salamanca, a city in Spain. And in the city, there's a local myth there that the devil teaches his knowledge to a number of pupils. That's mentioned in Don Quixote, or in another book by the author of Don Quixote. And this might be an explanation for the real name. Because Solomon is a biblical figure, so it would be quite strange if the biblical King Solomon would be the devil, so to say. So he finds a way around and says Scholomance comes from Salamanca. It doesn't name a specific location for the school or for the lake. Marian, in his listing, only mentions a lake in Dorna, where the local people also believe that the weather is made, and where a dragon is freezing the water and then chopping the ice to prepare for the hail. But as I said before, the location of the school is not the same as that of the lake. And this is what I mentioned before. In Marian's writing, you see that the Solomonari, only after their education at the Devil's School, are educated by other people who teach them how to make the weather. So that's another variant, and that disconnects the lake from Scholomance. That's also seen from Marian, that this lake is, or this myth of this lake is reported in different regions, not only in Hermannstadt, but also in Bystrica Nassau. That is more in the direction of Bukowina, also in Moldavia. So that is 200-300 kilometers to the northeast. And for this reason, it's difficult to pin down the location of either the Scholomance or the lake. Another scholar who wrote about local myths says that such lakes that are believed to be immeasurably deep are not uncommon in the folklore world of Siebenbürgen. And he mentioned still another lake, Freckle-Jeser, that is also near Sibiu, but exactly in the other direction, instead of to the southwest. You go 35 kilometers to the southeast, and you come to another lake that is believed to be the place where the devil is living. So we have this split now. The travel reports to the lake that Gerard described don't mention the link to the Scholomance, only that the weather is bad, and that throwing stones may cause a thunderstorm. Well, the text that analyzed the myth of the Scholomance, they don't mention the specific lake. On top of that, many lakes are said to be connected to the ocean and to be immeasurably deep. So there may be more than one lake in Romania that is in the end connected to this narrative. There's no unified narrative. There's no single location. The myth has been wandering from one place to another, and local variants were developed. So we don't have a specific place where we can pin it down. So why does Gerard then still pick this lake southeast of Hermannstadt as the lake where the weather is created and the dragons sleep? The elements I mentioned before, throwing stones into the lake, may cause a thunderstorm. So that is already very near causing the weather, or a dragon sleeping there. There was an article by Ludwig Reisenberg, a meteorologist. He said that many people in Hermannstadt believe that the weather of the city would be determined at this very lake. And also Joseph Binder, a forestry commissioner of Hermannstadt, mentioned that there's a popular myth that this lake underneath the Sindel would be the origins of storms. So there's a thin connection to connect this lake with bad weather, storms, and dragons, but it is only thin. Bram Stoker, from his side, he doesn't beat around the bush very long. He doesn't care so much if there is a, let's say, a evidence of a connection. He doesn't care about the location. He just writes, as we've seen at the beginning, they learned Satan's secrets in the Scholomance amongst the mountains over Lake Hermannstadt, where the devil claims the 10th scholar as his due. So he connects the lake with the Scholomance. That is the location. The Scholomance is at Lake Hermannstadt. And he uses a fantasy name so that you cannot exactly pin it down. He doesn't use the name Jeza or Jeza Romare or Große Jeza. So you can see that there are mechanisms at place here: conflation, abbreviation, fictionalization. The actual lake that is connected to the myth is disconnected so that it fits easily into Stoker's story. He was probably, that is my conclusion, not aware of the location of the lake that Gerard wanted to visit, and not aware of all the details of its reputation that we mentioned before. So Stoker takes it out of Gerard's story and uses it in his own context. That's my conclusion. At the end, I must say, to really follow the story in detail and to check upon the sources, you have to learn German and Romanian, or either one, or work with Google Translate, because the English-speaking sources on this are only secondary. If someone writes about this in English, he must have consulted these sources first and translated them. And the other thing is, if you want to really explore these myths and check it, you have to go there and speak with the local people. You won't learn it from a book, especially not from English books. So that's my story. I hope it was you could follow the idea and the geography, because for me, I've been traveling these places, of course, extensively. I hope it was clear that what I wanted to show here.
Thank you very much, Hans. I hope I'm heard now. Can you hear me? Just let me know. So first of all, a round of applause for the research in the first place and presenting it today. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for watching the time as well. Right, so we're opening the discussion part. So if anyone wants to comment, have questions for Hans, then please, now is your moment.
I'm raising my hand, but I don't know if you can see me, Magda.
But just go, Marius.
Because I cannot see myself. So okay, then may I ask just a short question and a short comment, Magda?
Absolutely, go on, please.
Okay, so Hans, congratulations for your presentation and for your argumentation on the location of this mysterious place described in Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course, it is possible that Bram Stoker read Émile Gérard's books, because he mentioned this detail in the interview with Jane Stoddard.
Mhm.
So she is a and so when Stoddard asks Bram Stoker about his documentation on Transylvania, Bram Stoker refers, and even Bram Stoker makes a mistakes and a mistake and says Romanian superstitions instead of Transylvanian superstitions.
Mhm.
But he is aware that that article was published by Emily Gerard in a specific volume. So he is quite aware of the volume that Emily Gerard published in the 1880s about her experiences in Transylvania. So congratulations. And of course, I was reflecting, Hans, on the fact that maybe without maybe without Emily Gerard, we
Mhm.
wouldn't have had the Dracula version which we have today. Maybe maybe we would not have Dracula at all without Emily Gerard's article.
That's possible, yeah. Or it would have been located somewhere else.
Okay,
Anyone
so
else? Sorry, Marius, if you want to.
congratulations, Hans. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Now you will be happy to know that I already wrote down all the sources and the footnotes and the bibliography. I can send you the article, or it will be published in the journal of the University of Brasov, so you can check it more in detail than is possible in such a quick presentation.
I have a quick question. Just yeah,
yeah.
can you
Yeah.
hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we
yeah.
can hear you now.
Yeah,
Yes, go on.
it's well known Bram Stoker. Obviously he infamously never actually went to Romania, to any part of it, which is unfortunate for his. It's believed he did know I think a Hungarian professor, Arminius, who is mentioned, who he has Van Helsing name drop in the novel. Actually, do you think it's possible that this professor, whose last name I'm drawing a blank on, it began with V. Yeah, do you think that he might have learned anything from anecdotally about this Scholomance relation from him? I mean, obviously, I don't know how much. There's probably little evidence of that, and Stoker himself was very private, but speculating.
I wouldn't know, because then I would have to be sure that Van Bury knew about it, and I didn't specifically look into Van Bury. There's been a lot of speculation if Stoker learned about Dracula from Van Bury, because they met 3 times, and Van Bury may have dropped a hint, but even that is open to discussion, and there are very different opinions about it. As far as the Scholomance goes, I would not know, because then I would have to check Van Bury's writings if he mentions it anywhere. So I'm not able to confirm such a connection, but maybe that's because I didn't read all of Van Bury.
Yeah, that's no. I mean, I haven't read it either. It just popped into my head that it might be an alternative source. I don't know.
It is possible. I mean, but for the moment, I think he mentions Gerard as his source. You can see in his notes that he made scribbles and comments about the article by Emily Gerard. So that is the most logical source. The most even the wording Lake Hermannstad, lake to the south of Hermannstad. In the wording, he's very near to Emily Gerard. So it's I think the most logical explanation is that he copied it from Emily Gerard, and that was, I think, his only source.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Could I
Yes.
please just ask your questions, guys, or say your comment.
Thank you, Hans. Congratulations on your presentations. I really enjoy your work. You know, I'm your fan. But this is very important for me because in my investigation as a designer, I try to go to places trying to find what we like to call the genius loci, the spirit of the place. So you going there, you have like this experience, this amazing experience. Can you tell us how does it feel to be there, to be traveling there, and the vibes you felt when you arrived into these amazing locations?
As I said, this location is quite isolated. You don't meet anyone. You have to go a long trail. You're walking 4 or 5 hours to get there. And the landscape is very barren. It is foggy. There's no big trees. It is all low growth. You see some sheep. So it already has, of course, a atmosphere. Also, when you arrive there, it's a bit gloomy. You know, if you want to imagine that this is a mysterious, mystical place, or a place where magical powers hold sway, it's very easy because the surroundings already support this impression. And from my side, I was glad I reached the place. I could verify it, I could see it, and to really taste the atmosphere. That is more when you climb the Syndrome Mountains. The mountain, the lake is at the bottom of a mountain. The mountain is 200 meters higher. If you go there it is still more barren, isolated, looks dangerous. You are not allowed to stay on top of there because of the risk of thunder flashes coming down there. It speaks to the imagination, but of course you need to have some imagination, because I didn't see the dragon, alas. I looked into the I didn't see the dragon, but I didn't throw stones either. I was too respectful of that.
You'll have to get back to see the dragon.
Chasing the dragon is dangerous. Okay.
He was hiding, I think.
Thank you, Hans.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Because we're running out of time, but if someone really needs to urgently ask something, then Sharon, please go.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see you too. Hi,
I
Sharon.
wasn't sure.
And now no, you're back.
Yes. Oh, hi. Wanted to just say to Hans, when he's talking about a dragon, as in like a mythical beast in the shape of a mythical beast, does he think there's any connection between like Dracula, as in Dracula the person, being in that sense used instead? Because I was just thinking about the way they was talking about the storms and the thunder, and in the book he's recognized as being able to, you know, look into supporting that he can, how can I put it, enhance bringing on a storm and things like that. I was just thinking about that because, as you know, that they was trying to find his actual burial area, as in Vlad as well, because I know you've done a lot of research into that. And also the minerals, because I would think the minerals are bringing up different atmospheric areas there because of the minerals in the rocks from there as well. It was just a thought about it, you know.
Yeah, I think that Stoker, maybe he was inspired by Emily Sherrard, because she mentions the dragon.
Yeah.
As she says, dragon sleeping there. Maybe that makes some connection in his head, and he said, okay, that's a place I must incorporate in my novel, because it also has to do with Dracula and dragons. But he doesn't mention it himself. He doesn't mention the dragon. He only says that it's a place high up in the mountains.
Yeah.
He doesn't mention the dragon himself, I think.
No, yeah. I thought a wonderful, you know, connection to it, and also the fact that of the area is lovely. The area looks absolutely beautiful. Love to walk that sometime. Yeah.
It is free to go there. There's no entrance fee, but you need a little bit of walking, and you need a strong guy at your sides to make sure you don't slip anywhere, you know, the slippery slopes there.
It reminded me parts
an
of
adventure.
Ben Nevis. Yeah, so I said to you, I walk quite a lot. So when I go to Wales and all that area, so yeah, I'd love to do that sometimes, Hans. Thank you. It was a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We've run out of time now, and we're just biting into Simon's keynote speech time. Sorry about it.
That's fine.
I recommend, if someone has any comments or questions to Hans, just to talk to him on private channels as well. But Hans, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and a really huge amount of research in the first place. So that was quite a dedication. And I remember when it was, well, I don't remember when it was happening, because it was happening before we met, but Hans was still thinking about it and writing about it when we met. So hopefully we can see this publication finally.
After we met in Timisoara, I went straight again to my second trip.
Yes, I do remember that, actually.
215, yeah, but the first trip was already 213.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we can't wait for the article now. Thank you so much, Hans, and over to Enrique now.